Hi, smart community friends, and hello to our listeners in Helsinki in Finland. You're amongst this month's top city for episode downloads. I'm back with another bonus episode of the Smart Community Podcast, sharing various guest answers to the question, where to next for smart cities and communities? And this time I'm sharing with you the answers from these guests. Simon Hunter from episode 265, Kris Libunao from episode 274, Raymond Sun and Susannah Wilkinson from episode 276, Miho Tanaka from episode 277, and finally Emily Yates from episode 278. Some themes that come through in the guest answers are around digitisation and virtual and augmented reality, and how these can assist with community engagement and creating more organised communities. Making processes more efficient and accessible and exciting helps build confidence in the community, and with the right tools creates better engagement. When the community is better engaged, their pain points are voiced and better understood. As Kris Libunao says, once communities are well organised, they will be more engaged. They will be more confident in terms of really voicing their opinions out. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Where to next for smart cities and communities?
I think we talked a little bit about that. I think it's the asset play around pole, conduit, and activated street furniture. And I think it's having those platforms to house the data and give people access to them to generate insights through AI, ML, whatever the right method is for the data and insights we're trying to generate. I also think it's mainstreaming. It's that the place-based application of technology is just part of the place development, not a sort of additional thing. That's what success looks like.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think like in the work I've been doing this year, that's coming more apparent as well, or not even coming more apparent, but yeah, being integrated into traditional, say, public transport projects. They're thinking about a smart city and digital strategy and getting all those different people involved as well, which is really important. That's not just this strategy that sits over here. I'm talking to designers, I'm talking to engineers, I'm talking to all these different people, and they're going, oh, okay, cool. How do we do this? And embedding that into the design from the very beginning. So I agree. I think we'll see more of that, and that'll be important. So where to next for smart cities and communities?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I hope in 2022, our focus really is communities, building communities rather than solely relying, not really solely relying, but solely dealing with the government, the local government. So in 2022, the next for smart communities, hopefully the communities will be more engaged, Once these particular communities are well organized, they will be more engaged. They will be more confident in terms of really voicing their opinions out, having this open dialogue, and hopefully it will happen in the near future.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I've been thinking more and more about that community element. I mean, obviously the community, smart communities, it's ingrained, but then it's actually engaging with the community. And it doesn't mean you need, like you're saying, you don't need a new app or a new piece of technology or this or that, the other. You just need to get them involved in the conversation. And how do we do that in a really fun, engaging, interesting way? Because it can't just be about, going to a lecture or going to a webinar, whatever. The community has so many different experiences and voices and, I guess, perspectives that we want, but we just need to speak their language. And that might be through different events, different activities, stuff that isn't, we might love going to a webinar to hear about what all the local governments are doing, but how do we bring that to the community so then they want to be there and they want to go to this festival of smart communities or whatever the case is?
Yeah, I agree with you that it should be, some like technology terms are quite, technical, that I feel like a normal individual will feel like, okay, I am no position to say things or to voice out what I am thinking. So this is really where educating the public really enters. We're in how can you really make them feel confident to really engage with this particular conversation? One of our projects in Smart City is data literacy. What we notice is that most of the data skill training are quite focused on the technical side. They're quite focused on data science, right? But no one is really dealing with how can you really make data consumable for everyone and for them to feel confident that they will engage. Okay, this is a misinformation and they will confidently say it. So this is really important. Like, how can you really empower the communities in the digital era wherein the residents, the civil society, the academics, the private sector will confidently and, trust to collaborate with the public officials and vice versa to really leverage on this data, to really leverage the benefits of technologies as well.
Where to next for smart cities and communities, Ray?
Well, obviously, like the spearhead will be the new technologies. So many things will follow what new tech is heading towards. So right now, the big one is the metaverse. Facebook recently changed its name to Meta. So that's a pretty big symbolic move. It's going to go really hard into the metaverse. And I have a likely feeling that metaverse will be a core component of smart cities.
Just for people that don't know what the metaverse is, if they haven't heard, maybe 30-second 101.
Yeah, so we have the physical world, which is like just our Earth and our cities. We have the digital world, which is the internet. Metaverse is basically the combination of the physical and the digital, where we're connecting every physical object on the Earth to a digital representation. And that's where we're talking. That's the concept of like digital twins. So eventually, in a full-fledged metaverse, everything will have a digital representation. And the whole point of that is that you can create value, or you can create insights, or you can create new types of opportunities based on the digital representation. And the most prominent example right now is NFTs. You can create NFTs or digital tokens that represent a certain object, and then that token itself can be commercialized. So that's one aspect. You can commercialize your digital twin to make more money, but there's also heaps of other applications. For example, about the ocean floor. There's also, I think there's an example in, in Melbourne, that the government has been thinking about having a big digital twin of the whole city to keep track of traffic stats, pedestrians, etc. So that's what we talk about the metaverse, just seeing everything physical in also a digital sense.
Yeah, there's another way of thinking about that as well, Zoe, which is that when we use the internet at the moment, for a long time we were consumers of content, then we started to create content. And now the metaverse can either be a representation of the physical world as we know it, or it can be imaginary. So it can be games. You can go and interact with your friends or strangers in a gaming environment. You can go and see an avatar of a concert performed, of a musician performing a concert in a digital realm. So it's just a different way of experiencing interactions in a digital world is another way of thinking about the metaverse.
Like Ready Player One?
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of, again, the use cases will be endless. And this hype around NFTs at the moment, Ray explained this. He gave me a great explanation of NFTs the other day, which I love, which is, it's digital bragging rights. You want to go and buy something to flex your avatar, how cool you are in the digital realm, in the same way that people used to go and people still buy expensive watches or fancy cars, but rather than buying a physical fancy watch, you go and buy something that you can show to others in a gaming environment. So, but that's, probably a little off topic.
Still interesting. Anyway, sorry, Ray, you go.
Yeah, and just to counter your question, how people, once that picks up, people start to adopt, especially younger people, they adopt things really quickly, and then there'll be a whole cultural, social change, and that will catch the interest of the government, in addition to legal issues arising out of that. And then there'll be a point where government really has to think about a new uplift, a complete revamp of certain laws, for example, privacy, which I talked about. And so I think it will be that sort of evolution. It'll be really hot, and then some problems will emerge, and then there'll be a big fix, and then become mainstream and healthy and sustainable. Yeah.
Mm. Susannah, where to next for smart cities and communities?
I'm going to have to take the smart legal contract angle because that's what I spend a lot of my time thinking about, which is, really digitizing relationships between businesses, between governments and businesses, and actually starting to look at the benefits that we can leverage. So one of the key aspects of using distributed ledger technology is if you've got a contract between two parties in digital form that's shared between the parties, you can actually create incredible efficiencies. So rather than each party keeping their own record, you can share that record between two or multiple people. So there's a scale efficiency there, which is, I think, potentially incredibly valuable. And you start to connect those different contracts to the oracles to other contracts. So through supply chains or through government procurement and through broader kind of ecosystem-wide benefits of the connectivity of contracts, that is something that we haven't yet realized as a society. And I think that's going to be incredibly powerful, as well as some of the other cool tech applications. So that's a distributed ledger technology kind of blockchain-based thing. And I think that's really interesting. And then the way that governments will start to use digital assets, so central bank digital currencies and these sorts of things to control, programmable money. I mean, that'll blow your mind.
So where to next for smart cities and communities in Japan?
So moving forward, I think Japanese government just launched a new digital department under their government division. So I think that's gonna be first to actually move all the digitalization forward. And specifically, in terms of government services, that's my job, but everything is still paperwork based. We even use stamps in Japanese called hanko all the time. And everything has to be stamped, and also the government procedures takes much longer than the other countries. For example, incorporation process take at least 1 week, usually 2 weeks. And while, for example, Estonia or different countries like Denmark, they only take less than a few hours, I think. Also, banking process, that's also takes a lot of time. So I think, this digitalization for the government service will start. I hope, I hope it's gonna definitely start soon. And also the government will start collaborating with a lot of private sectors, because private sectors know the needs of end users a lot, and they're good at creating a good UI UX features. So actually I started I and my engineer friends started an automation service for incorporation visa procedures for startup founders. And that kind of service will also shorten all the time for these paperwork. So I think this kind of service will flourish in the near future, I think.
Yeah, I was really surprised in Japan, how cash-based it was. I found that you got to get cash out. And I was like, what? Can't I just prep, So it is really interesting. And I think it's something it's always been done that way and it hasn't changed. But then you see places like Estonia, even Korea, speeding up those things, how much time it can save, and then what you could do with that efficiency. So, you've got time, money and resources that you're saving, which is really, really important. So thanks so much for sharing that. I think it's an important one, and important in some of the work that you're doing as well in, I guess, making and talking about fintech and improving those systems and processes and helping international startups get into Japan, I think is really key.
Yes. Also, they have good insights from their foreign background. They know of societies already digitalized, and they can also use their experience, knowledge to adapt to Japanese market.
Where to next for smart cities and communities?
Oh, that is a good question. I think within the city, at least in the United States right now, there's a huge push on infrastructure. We have that big infrastructure bill coming out. So a lot of my focus has been on electrification of fleet, of vehicles, of infrastructure, kind of looking towards that. I think, trying to think what else we're looking towards. That's been really all encompassing. Electrification. I'm really interested in virtual reality and augmented reality as tools to better engage the community. I think that that'll be really interesting, whether it's for workforce training as we continue to, deal with distance learning, or for getting people places like we are with our SEPTA work. I think there's going to be a lot around cybersecurity, which is not my strong suit, but, the World Health Organization predicted COVID before it happened, and now they're looking at a cyber pandemic. So I think that, really buckling down on how we as a city protect our network and data will be a huge internal focus, right? So yeah, I think those are kind of some areas that we're looking at here in Philly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think infrastructure and partnering that together with smart solutions is really going to be interesting and key. Like, it's not going to be the way we build a road, if we have to build a new road or even a new sewer system or whatever, shouldn't be the same as what we did 50 years ago, 20 years ago. We might use similar materials, but we want to be able to collect the data. We want to be able to make decisions. We want to be able to, even the process of building it, we can make better decisions now so we can have less waste, better materials, all that kind of stuff as well. So I think that will be really interesting moving forward.
Yeah, no, definitely.
The Smart Community Podcast is brought to you by My Smart Community. If you're looking for support in podcast strategy and production, workshop design and facilitation, or communication and media advisory, get in touch. Email hello@mysmart.community or head to www.mysmart.community.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.